Hello, everyone. Welcome to our parent chat tonight. We're so glad to have you here. This is a difficult conversation tonight, but we want to make this as accessible to all of you as possible, which is why we're here doing this together. As a reminder, for those of you who are new, I'm Coach Sherry. I'm the founder of TeenWise, but I'm here tonight as a volunteer for the Balance in Mind organization, which is funded and powered by the Lake Washington Schools Foundation. I just want to remind everybody that Balance in Mind was created and started by moms who were concerned after we lost three precious souls who died by suicide. And these moms said, hey, something's got to be done. We need to bring information about mental health to the community, support each other, and that's why we're here. And we've invited tonight Forefront from University of Washington, who is about suicide prevention, and they really know how to bring these conversations to your household so that you can talk to your teens about it. Your teens can learn about how to deal with thoughts of suicide or mentions of suicide. And so we are going to just have a conversation tonight about how we can support our kids and support each other. So welcome, Megan, and welcome, Amy. I really appreciate you being here tonight.
Sherry, we're so excited to be here and really thankful for this partnership, the ability to show up, and really like the juxtaposition of being in a space that is willing to talk about suicide, who wants to talk about suicide, is one of the things that brings us so much hope in our work in prevention. So, for those of you who might not know Forefront or our work, we are a Center for Excellence housed in the School of Social Work at the University of Washington. And our mission is really to help anyone prevent suicide in their community. So that can look a lot of different ways, from showing up at a training like this tonight, from doing prevention in schools, in your workplace, at your kitchen table, as a parent, and that's why we're here. I'll let Amy introduce herself and can roll in to what we're hoping for the parents and caregivers that are showing up tonight.
Well, my name's Amy, and I'm just thrilled to join here with Megan. As mentioned, we're at the University of Washington, and I spend a lot of my days in the training component. Megan is in the Forefront in the schools piece, but I have a background in mental health as well. And Megan, I think what makes us most qualified here today is we are the parents of kids. And we
Yes.
have teenagers and different ages. And so we are here as peers with you, and that's, I think, what makes us the most excited to spend the evening together, because we are thrilled that we're surrounded by other caregivers and youth that care enough about this topic that they want to have this conversation together. So that makes me super happy to see.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I love that because it's, as we were talking before we came on tonight, it's conversations you have around your dinner table. And same with me. I mean, it's not a conversation you have once, you have it a lot of times so that your kids know you can talk about this, you can handle it as a parent. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really, really key. So I want to remind everybody who's here that you can ask us questions tonight. This isn't us just talking at you. I know it's a very sensitive subject, and so you are welcome to put those Q&As in the Q&A box. That's usually down at the screen, depending on your device, it's down at the bottom, and we won't mention your name. So if you want to ask something specific and that's very personal that you don't want your name associated with it, we can take your questions that way. In the chat box, you can also stay anonymous. We'll see your names, but everybody else won't. It says everyone and has a little down arrow. If you click on that, you can say just hosts and panelists, and that will come to us. And again, we won't say the name, we will keep that confidential. So we welcome those questions.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we are so excited about, however old or young your kids are at home, or you have multiple folks, is that really our role as parents, right, is we get to help guide our young people into being fully functional humans. And there are so many bumps along the road that are part of that. So we are learning problem solving skills, coping skills, how to be a good friend, how to know when you're maybe in over your head in a relationship or in a supporting role, where you need to ask a trusted adult for support. And so I think one of the things that's so exciting about tonight is really being able to like just acknowledge like being a parent is hard. This work does not come with a manual, a user manual, though sometimes I wish it did. And there is so much information out there that often we can be in this place of, oh my gosh, am I doing it right? Especially when we're talking about issues like suicide. Like, am I going to make it worse by even talking about it? And
Mhm.
so we're so excited that you all are showing up tonight, that you are like stepping into this space, hopefully with lots of questions, with lots of bravery, recognizing that there's no right or wrong answers here. And really just like recognizing that like there's a community of people showing up on this webinar tonight that are caring in collective care of one another's kids. So when this work is hard, right, take care of yourself, lean on your parent buddies, lean on your own text threads of moms and dads and aunties and uncles that really lean into knowing who you are as a parent, um, and learn, acknowledge, and be okay with not being okay, and maybe modeling some vulnerability with your own kiddos.
Yeah, and I would add, Megan, also that I'm not sure if we have teens on with us tonight, but we might. And
Ooh,
and we
yes,
want to like spread the word. We want the parents, if it's parents on here without their teens, we want you to share this with your teens because
for
they
sure.
need to know this information too. So it's not just coming from us as parents. In the chat box, I'd love to know if we do have any teens on here. We'll make sure we.
And if you're a teen showing up with your parent on a Wednesday night, like, way to go, you. And the parents, if you have a teen sitting next to you and they are like hanging out, like they deserve extra ice cream or something to say, thank you for showing up to this conversation with
Yeah.
me tonight. That's hard. Well done.
For sure. Okay, so I noticed that you put, Megan, you put a PDF in the chat box. Do you want to start there?
Yeah. So we're sharing just a little adult caregiver parent packet that we share with all of our parent communities when we dive into Forefront's Learn skills, which Amy will talk a little bit more about. But that gives a one pager of resources around what is Learn even. We'll tell you in a bit, so don't panic if you don't know. Some local and national level resources around mental health and well-being. And then even a role play scenario of how do you ask someone about suicide if you are worried about them and concerned, but maybe need a little bit of scaffolding or a model to do that. So that's in the chat, and we're happy for you to share it too with your community after this event as well.
Great.
Well, I'll take the screen a little bit as we transfer over, and we'll set this up so that we can take a look at our presentation here. I can pull it up. For those of you that are coming in this conversation, I just want to acknowledge that having those notes, our hope with that is also that you don't have to feel quite as anxious as you're hearing all this new information today. I know sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to forget it. I want to hear each part. Some of you might be sussing out, for example, like, is this something I could show my teen later or my neighbor, or who could I bribe to watch this with me? And so kind of let those shoulders drop a little and know that we will give Sherry this PowerPoint after. So you'll have access to every slide and actually more, because I'm only going to do a few of them. And you'll have that packet that Megan has, and she'll put some resources here today so that you can be present as a parent. As you're hearing this, as you're thinking about it and how it can be used in your life, instead of worrying that maybe there's all this great info, and if you don't remember it all, like what's going to happen. So that's why we hope to provide that with you. Megan already shared a little bit about Forefront. And if you've heard some of these steps, we're just going to kind of touch on them really quickly to make sure we all have some of the same tools in our toolkit this evening before we launch into all the questions. And if you've heard it before, then it's a refresher. I know a lot of us can refresh a little. If you haven't heard it before, then this might have some new elements, some new skills that you might be wanting to try after our conversation here this evening. So we'll do this material and then we'll jump right into the questions after that as well. So we want to make sure this whole evening that you take care of yourself. And so we want to acknowledge that sometimes when we have these conversations, even at the dinner table or maybe together in a talk like this, it can feel overwhelming. So if you need to step away and get support from someone, or just be mindful this evening, if you're a teen watching with your parent, be there for each other. What's some self-care that you can do this evening, maybe after sitting in this space? But we want to make sure that you're extra gentle on yourself and be thinking about that. And then as we think about suicide as a public health issue, we know it's the second leading cause of death for youth in the United States. We know it's 15% of those suicides that are there, and yet sometimes we don't want to talk about it, right? And so tonight's about removing that stigma. Tonight's about making sure that we all know a little bit about suicide and what we can do together as that village. So if there's only one thing that you remember tonight that Megan and I say, we hope it's this, that asking about suicide does not cause suicide. That as you listen tonight and as we talk and ask questions and wonder together how to do this well with our families, you can blunder and not know how to say it. You can be awkward. You can just have that heart beating so much and that dry mouth trying to say it. And you're doing good work by bringing it up, right? You're reducing stigma around, you're letting people talk about this, and you're probably saving a life. So asking about suicide does not cause suicide, and there's lots of research that we're happy to meet and talk over coffee about why it doesn't cause suicide. So we want to be having these conversations. We also just want to make sure that you know that it affects all communities. So as we think about as parents today, we think about the youth in our homes. And if you're a youth listening today, you're thinking about your friends at school, the friends on teams, the peers you have, and the struggles that you have together. We're also talking about your grandparents. We're talking about your parents and your coworkers. We're talking about everyone. So it impacts all of us. And then suicide results from many complex factors. And so you're going to leave today, and we're not going to have this nice little tied bow tie on a box that answers all the things for you. It's not how this topic is. It's really complex. But we are going to give you some tools of how to use in conversations this very evening. So that's what we know about suicide. We also want to make sure before we give you the tools that you have a sense of how, when we're considering suicide, how we might be feeling. Because if you haven't had that experience, it feels kind of foreign. And Megan and I like to talk about theories and think about it. We're going to just share one with you this evening. But we want to make sure you know that suicide isn't always about wanting to die. That in fact, it's often about wanting to end overwhelming pain. And so we know that one theory here by Thomas Joyner shares with us that sometimes when people are feeling like a burden and they're feeling alone and isolated and they don't belong with their family or friends or somewhere, and they're having unbearable pain, that causes that overwhelming pain. And sometimes when your ability to cope isn't strong enough, right? Lots of things are happening in our lives. You see that teeter-totter a little bit, right? It becomes overwhelming. We're thinking maybe about suicide. So it doesn't always mean that someone wants to die and be gone forever necessarily, but that pain is so intense, it seems like the only way out. And that's why you and me need courage, because in that moment, that person needs us to reach out and ask them if they're thinking about suicide. You might be wondering what protects about suicide then. What can we do in case someone's feeling that way? We want to make sure you know that your presence here tonight, right? That's a protective factor. As we think about parents and what we can be doing, Megan and I'll share some different things here today. But connections to friends and family and culture in our community is the number one protective factor. So if you're watching today and you think about your really great friends in your high school or your middle school, those communities for you are protective factors. When you think about people that we trust as adults, as the youth in our lives, that's protective factors, right? So we want to make sure that we're aware of that because that's already what we can be doing is investing in each other in our communities. And we can also limit access to lethal means, and we'll talk more about that later. We're going to talk about coping and problem solving skills and access to physical and mental health care helps as well. So here's our model. We're just going to share it with you today. It's the L.E.A.R.N model. You heard Megan share it a little bit before. It's look for signs, empathize and listen, ask about suicide, reduce the danger, and next steps. So we're just going to peek a little bit about look for signs. And I'm guessing here today that if we were together and if we were in a room and spent some time together, we'd have the opportunity to hear all about the different things that you know about warning signs. Today, I'm just going to list some for us here, although here we go, that we can be thinking about together. And the thing I want you to be knowing about warning signs is you don't have to memorize this list, right? We're going to have it for you on the slides. There's lots of places to look this up. But when you see a big change in somebody's behavior, when you sense that something has shifted with their personality and you're not quite sure what's been going on, we want you to have that gut feeling that something might not be right, especially if it's followed maybe a loss or some really big disappointment in someone's life. So you might see emotions and feelings. I know in the therapeutic realm, when I've worked there before, as a therapist, I often saw it as irritability and agitation and anger, just not being able to settle back and re-regulate as maybe they had in the past. We think of people who maybe don't have joy doing what they did before, and withdrawing in different ways. It can also be your student body president who's maybe looking for perfection and not living up to it in their own mind. We don't always see warning signs with youth, right? Sometimes they don't want to burden us with them. So these are just some of the signs that you can see. I think about, especially with youth, when we think about discrimination, for sexual orientation, for all sorts of things. When we think of how the community treats individuals, those also, right, can end up being warning signs because of the difficulties that you experience. So here are some that you see before you. Again, they'll be listed there, but when you see that change in behavior, be thinking and wondering if someone's doing okay. Empathize and listen. We talk a lot about empathy, but I know it's a skill in parenting we could do better. That's trying to see the world as others sees it, being non-judgmental and really validating someone else's feelings. We don't have to agree. We don't even have to really know always why, but we need to know how someone feels. And some of the best empathic things I think are on the slide, and I'd love for some of you who have really good empathic phrases that you might say, whether you're listening now or watching this later on a link. I hope that there's some that you use or your friends use and that you can share them with each other. But feel free to put them in the chat here today too and think. But I'm so glad you told me you must really be hurting. It's okay to be honest. Things that allow people to feel affirmed, validated, and open up. Asking about suicide is the A. I know this is the one a lot of people dread the most. We want you to be courageous and ask directly. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? You're modeling to someone that you can have hard, difficult conversations, that you're a safe person that they can open up with and share so they don't feel so lonely with their feelings. So we're going to avoid vague language because we really want them to make sure and know what they mean. Is it harming self, or we really want them to say they're thinking of killing themselves? And here is a specific, just an example. This is a great one to even take a picture of tonight, maybe, of some phrasing that we're going to give you that you could use. And it sounds like this. Sometimes when people are, and then you insert the warning signs there, they're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? And so by using this, and you'll get to see it in a video later, we're showing people they're not the only ones who might have struggled before. We're also telling them we're following their life. We care about them, right? We're seeing the warning signs. Sometimes, here you have this little example that you can see here that of it, and you can also think about other ways that it might be in your life. But sometimes when people feel like things don't matter anymore, they're isolating from friends, they're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? And you're going to see a dad say this. Megan and I have seen a youth say it to one another. We've seen people text it to each other, right? We see adults say it. We see professionals say it. But you don't need to have a mental health background, right, to talk about it. We know that. So this is a great way to frame this question if you're talking with someone. And then when do I ask? Again, if you're wondering and thinking about something, one of the questions when we were talking with Sherry about having this training, people bring up, well, what if someone is just not doing well? They haven't talked about suicide. They haven't talked about harming themselves, but I just am really worried about them repeatedly and I can't get it out of my head. So we're here to tell you, ask. If you're concerned and you're wondering, you're looking for those signs or big changes maybe in their behavior, but anytime your gut is unsure, you're going to ask someone. And if they say no, you're going to stay neutral and not judgmental. Let them know that you care for them, that you're concerned, right? You're going to move to the next steps that we'll cover here quick. And then again, one more little tool for your toolbox. I love this question. If you were thinking about suicide, who would you talk to? I'm here to say that sometimes it's not us. Even if my kids, I make them talk about this all the time in my house, I am not always that person, right? There's other coaches, there's school counselors, there's parents of other kids that they're friends with. It's not always us, and that's okay. But who would you talk to if you're thinking about suicide? That helps someone plan in advance. And if someone says yes, we're still neutral, we're still non-judgmental, and we're taking it seriously. You might be stressing on the inside, but you're connecting with that person, right? Thanking them for their honesty, acknowledging the pain they're in, showing them empathy, right? And then you're going to move on to those R and N steps that we're going to cover quick. And then you're going to want to get support. We also sometimes get the question that's like, what if they say, don't tell anyone? Like, if you tell anyone, I'm not going to be your friend, or they threaten harm if you're going to tell someone. Here's the reality. Sometimes when you ask for help, it does mean someone's mad at you for a while. We often give the example of CPR as a parent, right? As a student, if you're the friend, it's just like CPR. You are keeping someone alive while you bring in professionals. You do not also then need to be the heart surgeon, right? You just need to know how to call help and keep them alive. So in this state, there's many times people have been mad at me for getting involved. And sometimes that fractures that relationship for a while. I've watched it with my kids and friends. Sometimes when we speak up, it can be tough. But I want you to know that your friend, hopefully, right, get the support they need and lives. And that's where you can repair that relationship later. So sometimes you're going to make someone angry and you're also going to keep them alive. So you have to think about that courage and who you could get involved. But again, if you involve an adult, if you involve the professional, they're going to help you guide you through that situation. Reducing the danger is asking some follow-up questions. The reason we do that is we want to make sure you know, how do I attach them to the right kind of help? When do I call 911? When do I call or text 988? When do I tell someone at school? I'm worried right now. So have you thought about how you might end your life? Do you have access to those methods? And have you thought about when you might do it? That gives us the sense if someone has something in their backpack right now with a plan today, or if someone has never really thought details but just doesn't want to be around anymore. So we're trying to put time and distance between that person and the methods, right? Because then we can get the resources and support. For every parent that's out here right now, and if you're a youth, go tell your parent to do this. Megan and I have done this. Make sure that any firearms that are in your home, whether for work or hobbies or for any reason, that they are locked up. We want to make sure that prescription medications, over-the-counter medications, any ones you don't need are not in your house and you've locked the other ones up. At both Megan's house and my house, it is regular that you can access a small amount of meds and the rest are locked up. It's a conversation every person that enters my house who needs more meds. And I'm continually going through and culling the amount we have. You don't need medication from 20-year ago surgeries, right? You do not need Costco-sized bottles. We want to model having that right amount at home. And if you have a child in crisis or you're in crisis with a friend, you want to make sure that the people in their life are being coached by other professionals. They will let you know what else you at that time need to be putting away. And the next steps, the key here is staying with the person. Do not leave them alone. Make sure if you're a youth, that's kind of where this ends, that you're going to bring in a professional, an adult in your life, and they're going to help you navigate the situation. For those of you who are adults out here, you can be helping to think about how to remove the dangers if it's safe for you to do it in that moment. Seeking help immediately, we're all going to do that, right? And making sure that some professional gets involved. And then following the crisis, we want to make sure to check in with the person and make sure they are supported. And if you're an adult here, you might help and think through that village. If you're a peer, you're going to have an adult help you determine who gets involved, because we want to be confidential and respectful of that person. As an adult, you're most likely going to have that pediatrician be involved, maybe their therapist and other people that you're going to start working with. It might be people at your child's school. They're going to be confidential and support you. They're trained to do this. And so who is your village and how can they come around your family to help with what's going on? And then foster a culture of help seeking in our homes, right? That's where we have these conversations at the dinner table. That's why when we see this video and you see it in the car, that is how these conversations happen in the everyday lives with each other, stepping out in daring, courageous ways to check in on the people we love to see how they're doing. Your packet that Megan has, she can put it in the link again here in our chat so you have it again. We'll have lots of information of places and people that you can talk to, and we'll unpack this a little with the questions. What happens if you call 911 or 988? Here's lots of great resources for you. And now we're going to watch the video so that you can see yourself. How does it look as a parent trying this conversation out with your child? All right, here we go.
Hey,
Let me try this again.
I just want to check in, because, we haven't talked in a while, just the two of us.
I guess so. What's up?
Well, it's just that I've noticed that lately things seem to be kind of rough on you.
Yeah, it's been pretty stressful lately. Can we talk another time? I just got back from school and practice, and I have a ton of homework tonight.
It's just that things don't seem to be getting any better for you. Just this past month, I've noticed that, well, you've been in your room way more than usual, and you don't seem to be hanging out with your friends anymore. So, you want to tell me a little bit more about, what's going on?
I don't know why this year feels so much harder. It's just stressful. Everyone is too busy, and there's just so much going on.
Well, I see you trying hard. But, you feeling like you're not doing enough? Hey, look, this feels important. You want to talk more about it?
I feel like I can't do anything right. I just mess everything up. This year is so overwhelming. It didn't used to be this hard.
I did not know things were so overwhelming. I hope you know that I love you, and I'm on your side. But if you don't want to talk to me, do you think you can talk to a school counselor?
No. How is that supposed to help? I don't want anybody finding out.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you had someone to talk to. A lot of times when people are feeling overwhelmed and as stressed as you have been lately, they can start to think about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide?
I don't know. I'm just tired all the time. Nothing is going right. I feel like it's more work for everyone when I'm around. Nothing I do or say seems to help anyway.
Oh, are you saying that things are so bad that you might not want to do this anymore?
I don't know. It's just hard. I don't want this to be a big deal.
Johnny, have you been thinking about suicide?
Kinda. Sometimes I think about it. I don't know what to do. I don't want to feel this way anymore.
Okay, well, look, first of all, thank you for telling me. It takes a lot of courage to talk about this. I can only imagine how hard it is. So next, I'd like to ask you a few questions so that we can figure out what I can do to help support you.
Do we have to do this now?
Yes, we do. You're important to me. So I'm just gonna ask, have you actually thought about how you might take your life?
Not really. The idea of suicide keeps popping into my head, especially at night. Sometimes I feel like it would just be better if I wasn't here. But it scares me too.
Oh, that must make you feel so alone when that happens. So, what do you think about?
Well, we have that Costco bottle of Advil in the bathroom. Sometimes I think about taking a bunch of it, but it kind of scares me too. I don't want to hurt anybody. I feel trapped.
Okay, well, I can see why that would be scary. Look, thanks for letting me know about the Advil. I think we need to take a look at what's at home so we can make sure that you're safe until you're feeling differently. I'll work on that today, okay? Is there anything else?
No, I think that's it. It's especially hard at night.
Okay, well, look, I don't want you to feel alone in this. So next time you feel that way, please, just come get me and we can just sit and talk.
Thanks. Yeah, that would be nice.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing this with me. okay? I don't know what our next steps are, but I know I want you to feel more supported, and I want you to feel safe at school and at home.
We're going to have to keep talking about this.
Yes, we are. This is important. And, well, suicide's a big deal.
I wanted to be able to handle it on my own. I did not want you to worry about me.
Well, we all need support sometime, okay? So I'm so glad you told me. This is way too much to handle alone. You know, earlier you mentioned that you didn't want to talk to your school counselor. So is there any other people in the community or someone at school that you can talk to about this?
I guess my English teacher, she kind of knows I'm stressed out and having a hard time.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It's nice to have someone to talk to. It helps you to feel less alone.
I don't even know what to tell her, though. What do I even say?
Good question. Well, we can figure this out together. Okay? I think I need some help, too. Hey, isn't there some information on the back of your school ID card?
Yeah, here.
Okay, well, what if we call the school counseling office or 988 together? I bet they'd have some good support and offer some next steps. Oh, but since it's after school hours, why don't we call 988? Are you willing to call with me?
Yeah, but can we text instead?
Sure. Let's start there. Do you want to text or do you want me to do it?
I'll do it. 988, right?
Right. 988.
Thanks for watching that with us. It's always so helpful to watch them in action. I feel it. We've been there. It's hard work, and yet they get through the conversation. We're going to jump into Q&A, even though we'd kind of like to debrief that for the next hour, how it felt seeing it, what you thought. Could you do that? But we're going to hand it over to Sherry for some questions.
Excellent. And I love that video, how it wasn't super easy and the parent, moved forward and also took some ownership. I love that. I'm going to go do this. So great video. Okay, so we have some questions that we know come up frequently, and some of the questions is also based on some things I got via email, which is one of the reasons we initiated this parent chat tonight. So yeah, we're gonna just dive into these. Let's see. Okay, so one of the things that we hear a lot from teens and parents about group texts and chats. Teens know about these group texts. It's a whole social thing going on. What group are you in? What are you not in? But they can get really scary fast, especially when there's a lot of people in there, a lot of emotions, lots of conversations and texts coming through, right? So teens and tweens navigate like all kinds of situations. Some of the things are, someone mentions they're thinking about suicide in this chat. The text about self-harm, somebody's just talking about it, they're doing it or thinking about it, that they've planned to end their life. So these are all kind of different levels we'll talk through. And a thread where a dangerous act is already in process. Like somebody is in the chat actually saying, I am doing this right now and harming myself or intending to end my life. So in those situations, and there's a lot, what is the advice that you would give to teens? Let's talk about this from a teen perspective.
Yeah.
What do they do when they see this going on? I know there's research on, a whole bunch of people see something difficult going on and everybody's like, oh, that person will deal with it. That could happen in this situation, for instance.
For sure.
Yeah, and also the scary point of doing something about it. So
Yeah.
let the two of you take it from here.
Yeah, I love that you brought up this idea of like bystander intervention because so much of what that is like, do I see something in the chat that is urging me to act? And do I think someone else is going to take care of it? Because if you do, usually you're going to let it lie. And so I think one of the things that's really important, like before those group texts even start, is having those conversations with your kiddos at home about how are you going to use your phone for good when you're in a group chat of 2, of 3, of 8, and you maybe miss a whole string of threads, or maybe you're watching it go through. I think one of the most helpful things that we can do is if you see something, to say something. And you don't need to say that in public in the group chat. It is an opportunity and an invitation to show up for someone, to acknowledge how they're doing, to demonstrate empathy, to look for those warning signs, and to reach out to that person one-on-one and to say, hey, I noticed you said something in the group chat. I just want to make sure that you're okay. Right? And that's where you might start with those lower level, less scary chats. It might also be that you are like, hey, mom, dad, trusted adult in my life, I'm reading something in my group text that I don't even know what to do with right now. Could you help me figure out what my next step is? I have known young people in my role as a school counselor who have literally missed an attempt in process because everyone else was like so distracted doing the things, right? And they had a friend that said, I am doing this now, and they missed it. And it wasn't until hours later, right, that thankfully someone checked in with their family, and that family was able to activate some different safety mechanisms to make sure that that kid was okay. And thankfully they were. But it's one of those things where you got to pay attention. You got to be committed to the group chat in a way of like, there are things happening that make you uncomfortable, name it. If there are things that you feel like you can't handle or don't want to be a part of, maybe that's not a group chat to hang out in, right? And that's a hard thing to do as a young person because the FOMO is real, right? You do not want to miss out on the things that are happening around you, but it's about taking care of others, right? Like if you are worried about something you are reading or seeing or the way that others are interacting with each other, those L.E.A.R.N steps work beautifully over text, just as the same way they work in a face-to-face conversation. It's like, hey, I am noticing X, Y, and Z when you're engaging with this thread. I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Right? And then take it from there. Sometimes when people are saying X, Y, and Z, they're thinking about suicide. They're thinking about hurting themselves. They're thinking about self-harm, whatever that behavior is, right? Like if it's really about suicide, say the word suicide. But if there is someone engaging in self-harming behavior, you gotta name it as it is. And to be direct, to be honest, to be brave. And to also remember, like, it's okay to be like, it's okay not to be okay. And can we talk about who might support us when we're struggling? Like, who can you reach out to? Could I help you reach out to that person? So it's about paying attention. It's about saying something. It's about showing up for the people that you care about in the way you want them to show up for you. And then when it is dangerous, scary, over your head, it's always okay to say, this is above my pay grade. I need some help with this. And the adults in your lives, the counselors at school, they're there to help navigate those really hard situations. I mean, you could even call Teen Link or text 988 about, I'm in this really overwhelming group thread. I am worried about these people and I don't know what to do about it. And get some advice that way as well.
I was just going to add that it can be confidential. So if you're in here watching as a teen or a parent trying to get a kid to speak up about something, you can report anything and everything, right, to that school counselor or someone at school. They will withhold your name and they will still directly interact with that youth and help them. If you're seeing a therapist is another way that you might speak up. Your therapist can call the school or someone. Like there's many ways the information can get to the people that need it. And no one is saying that Megan made the phone call, right? Someone who knows this kid somewhere in the world was concerned. It could have been a coach. It could be anything. So just remember, it can be confidential.
Yeah, and I think also, you mentioned before, Amy, that when you do this, somebody may end up mad at you. You may
Yeah.
even lose that friendship. Hopefully, they would come back around. But the most important thing is saving a life. And even if they don't come back to be your friend again, you know that you did the right thing. And yeah, I think that really stops people. I don't want to say anything because I don't want them to be mad at me. But it's much better for them to be alive and mad at you than to not be alive.
Yeah.
Great
And
point,
so
Sherry.
it's worth that risk. It's worth that. One thing that I would ask, a follow up on this, if they're in the middle of it, like they're saying, I am doing this right now, how does that change the urgency of how you deal with it? Because I assume that at that point you don't just text and say, hey, how are you doing? That reaches a different level of urgency.
Yeah, that is the place where I wouldn't do not pass go, do not collect $200. Like that's where you go just straight to an adult that you trust or care about. If you're a teenager, right?
Mhm.
Or if you were an adult, that's where I would go straight to a 988 call or even potentially a 911 call to say, hey, I have just gotten word of this event in process. This is the information that I know. And you do the best that you can with the information that you have. And so I think that that is a place where intervening swiftly, bravely, courageously is really important.
We would just describe a little bit. So if you call 911, just to know what happens, depending on where you are, it might look different, but someone professionally will be coming. So whether that's medically, police, or someone would coming to the scene that's external. And so that's imminent danger, right? When it's happening right now. 988, if you have a little bit of time and you can call there, then everyone on board with 988 that you should know here is in Washington. It doesn't show up on your phone that's been used even. So if you're a teen or you're someone worried that someone's going to see, they're immediately going to help you triage what's happening. So they're going to ask what's happening and get you the help immediately. They're going to cue you all along for what's happening. So you don't have to be thinking about it. They'll ask you all those right questions so that they can discern what's going to happen. And they know in that area, based then on your number, what is available, who can come at that time, who's open, who has the people, and they'll tell you what to do. So that's what's so great. And Megan and I would say every single one of you who's here tonight should try out 988 before that emergency. Sit down with your teen and make the phone call or do the text. You just say, I'm practicing what it sounds like if I called and I was worried about my friend. I'm calling, I'm checking how to be if I called because my friend or I'm texting their kid is suicidal. What do I do next? And then you can experience the whole thing. That helps in the moment for you to have done that as well. We want you to know a lot of times it's going to be, if it's happening in the moment, the recommendation is going to be, let's say it's like almost happening, but you're not worried about the person in the moment. They might say, go to the ER, right? If someone has a therapist or something and it's daytime, you're going to get a hold of that therapist. Some people might call their pediatrician's office if they have a little bit of time. We want to continue to affirm that schools have staff members at any point who can help affirm and figure out what's happening and tell the next steps, right? Just what Sherry was asking, they can say if it's in happening or not happening, item isn't there, the plan is for this afternoon or evening. They know what to do now versus later. And so for those of you wondering, what happens if I take my kid to the ER, for example, there will be some assessments that are done that your kid is going to talk to providers, you're going to talk to providers. And if it's really urgent, they will keep someone overnight and work with you that way. And if it's something safe to go home, they're going to leave you with resources, people to call tomorrow. They're going to check in with you. They're going to make a safety plan with your youth, talk through that safety plan with you so you know what to do in those moments when those urges come, what to do to soothe themselves, external support. For some people here in King County, the CORES unit you might have heard of, you could look that up. I always think I wrote down, it's Children's Crisis Outreach Response System. Anyone under 18, and they're a mobile unit that would get you appointments in your home within 24 to 48 hours after that ER visit. So these are things you can advocate for. You could tell others and say, did you know this exists? You maybe could keep them for 2 months. They'll make sure that you're getting a therapist, external outside supports, But that gives you a little bit of a sense how this goes in that intensity that Sherry's talking about in that moment. How do we plug in the resources that exist here in Seattle, East Side, where we are, with what happens when things are kind of progressing? But again, as soon as you attach to someone who's a professional, they know the next steps. The school knows the next steps. They're going to have you meet with a pediatrician even after the ER, right? They want to think about the medical things happening. That person's going to bring in their knowledge, right? We have so many resources, and you might have to get on list upon list upon list if you're not in crisis to access them. That's the hard part. But there's so many resources here that you can be given, that hopefully you can have access to, and that the professionals can guide you in getting. So I hope it doesn't scare you, the unknown. Even if you're unsure, say 988, tell me what happens if I do this and give someone's name here. What would that look like? Right? If you have that kind of time. So reach out to professionals. If you're a youth, make sure an adult is involved. Adults, you make sure you're accessing all those professionals around you to learn about the process. So you have courage to engage, knowing there's lots of safety nets and there's people who know exactly what to do. That if someone needs outpatient, they'll figure it out. If they need inpatient, they'll figure it out. There's lots of things along the way. We won't get into the details, but the professionals know what to do.
So bottom line, reach out to someone. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're the teen or parent.
and don't do it alone, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a whole universe out here that is like built around supporting crisis service. And with the expansion of 988, there is so much opportunity, right? And even opportunity to get those crisis calls answered in the right language, to have those crisis calls answered by folks who share your identities, right? So there is a whole branching system to 988 that allows you to press 1 just for regular 988, to get to veteran services, to get to the Trevor Project and the Trans Lifeline, to get to Native and Strong in Washington, which is a phenomenal service, to get services in Spanish, and then I think 280 something languages through a language translation service. So it's there to be utilized by anyone, because we know that mental health, like we all have mental health, right? We all have days where things are hard. Suicide impacts everyone. And 988 is there to be a resource for all.
I love that. I didn't realize they had all those languages available. That is spectacular. I am very happy to hear that. So one of the things I also want to ask about is if, like in these group chats, whether it's the other parents or the teens, about contacting the parents of the child. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a first step? Is that a last step? Where does that fit in there?
I mean, remember that like tiered level of risk that we went through in that first scenario of like, it's like medium, and then it's like, oh no, it's happening right now, right? I think sometimes it might depend on where in that stratosphere that young person is. Might also depend on how comfortable I am with their family. Like, do I know them at all or do I not? But I think my children, at least at this point, know, like, Mom, I know that you are a mandated reporter. And I know that if you are worried about me or one of my friends, you will say something, whether I want you to or not. And that is just how we have built our life and our conversations around these. And so I would say, for me, it would depend on what I was reading in that text my kiddo was sharing with me and how well I knew that parent. And then there's this other part of me that'd be like, yeah, I don't mind calling a parent I don't know. That's totally fine. And it would, but if I were uncomfortable, like maybe that's not a skill set I have, then I would utilize those kind of anonymous channels that Amy was talking about earlier of, hey, I'm reading this. My kid is reading this. We are hearing this concern over and over again about this student. I need someone at the school to check in on them because I need to make sure that they're safe. And I would take myself out of it if I didn't feel safe calling.
And I would
Yeah,
just add
and
from the
go ahead.
from the research standpoint, otherwise too, we work, in 50 high schools across the state that in our program and in our comprehensive plan involving family is based on research and it is a best practice. There are some situations where, right, it's the parents or the situations that make it harder, but the adults in the life, having them identify. So we want to figure out who the adults, the safe adults are. And that's again why accessing those people who can help figure it out. But we do know for sure that research is clear that involving the adult figures in their life, might be an uncle, an aunt, somebody else, is going to help the safety of that child in the long run. So we do want to really do our best to figure out who those people are, but someone else might hold the keys to who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good to know. And it's great for the teens to know because I know, especially they hit middle school and high school, and they feel like as they're individuating from parents, they want to be their own person, show that they're so responsible, they can deal with these situations. But you've made a very clear thank you to both of you that when it's above your pay grade, so to speak, bring somebody else in. And this is for
Yes.
parents too. Like
Yeah.
this is it's serious stuff. And you
Yeah.
cannot be expected to be the sole person that's supporting them and getting them through it.
And it's serious stuff for therapists, right? Like
Mhm.
therapists who work in this field are also consulting with other therapists
Mhm.
around what the best next steps to take are. And so I think as much as we can normalize asking for help, right? Of saying it is not our job singularly to save someone else's life. It is our job to like wear a seatbelt when we drive as a preventative measure, to learn CPR so we can get the person to the next level of care. But it is not our job to be the heart surgeon, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to do that by ourselves.
Okay. All right. Next question for you. And during and after, like your teen or tween has walked alongside a friend who's in distress, how do we make sure they get the support they need after they've gone through this difficult time?
Mhm. Yeah. You want to take that one, Amy? I know you've
Oh,
like,
go ahead, it's yours. Go ahead. I
oh,
just was like, I do like it, like hearing it. I'm like, it's good.
oh, it's
This is
such a
what we're
good
about here
question.
tonight, right?
I
Supporting
mean,
our teens.
all those like those the learn skills, right? Those can help support your teen after they have supported a friend, right? They might be going through a friendship breakup. They might be going through their own stuff around, man, that was a really hard situation. So showing up for them, acknowledging that it is hard, listening without fixing, um, offering your empathy, recognizing like what's normal and not normal for your own kiddo. So if they need more support, right, maybe you help link them to more care. I have seen a number of young people who have, that was my 14-year-old who just kissed me on the back of my head,
Aw.
um, who have, just needed to talk it through and then they're okay. And then I have needed other young people need support really like navigating class makeups, figuring out how they are going to like navigate day after day after day with this person in their classroom that they really need a boundary from. And so being able to show up for them as we need to also make it okay to set a boundary if someone needs to set a boundary, but to listen, to empathize, to really not offer to ask them what they need rather
Mhm.
than assume as the grown up that we know, and then to take it step by step and day by day, right? We know that sometimes, at least I know, at least in my teenage life, I could have a really really hard day and thought like my universe was ending, and then next day I was okay, right? And so parents, if you are listening, like be the barge for your kids, right? Like be that steady place that they can come back to no matter how rocky the waters get. Listen, let them bump up against you, let them make mistakes, but be the barge. Like don't freak out, let them freak out, you stay steady.
I love that. Yeah, and I think it comes down to recognizing they might need to process through. There's in that moment there's so much attention on the person who's struggling with suicidal thoughts or attempts, and you know it's a
Yeah,
lot for them too. It's a
for
lot.
sure. Did I miss anything, Amy, in that?
No, I think that's good. And I'm just watching our clock. I don't know if we get another question or we're almost going to wrap up.
I
Where are
think we
you
can
at,
fit
Sherry?
in. Let's fit in one more.
Okay.
I think this one is important. So, teens at school, right? And they overhear someone saying
Mm,
something about suicide, and they don't even know the teen. What do they
yeah.
do?
So I'm going to speak as someone who came to this work in suicide prevention as a school counselor. I've worked in middle school and high schools almost my entire career prior to and pre-K classrooms, but that doesn't count. And I would say just tell someone, find a grown-up in your school building. That could be your English teacher, like it was in the video. That could be a school counselor. That could be the custodian. Tell someone that you heard what you heard and let them take it from there.
Hmm.
It could be a rumor, it could be not true, it could be a joke. It also could be very serious, and the adults in the building know what to do. Let them do their job.
Yeah.
And that's when we do
I
those culture shifts in school, I would just say. If every time we hear the joking about it, commenting, and it's being said, things are followed up on, that's how culture and community changes, right? That
Yes.
every time we hear this, someone's going to check in on you. So joking about it all the time isn't going to be helpful. It's not going to serve you well, right? And we care so much about each student here that we're going to have those conversations. So I think of it as those culture shift opportunities, and every now and then it's going to be a real comment that you've heard, you know?
Right. And one thing that I've heard from a few of my clients was that they had people in their class who were joking about it all the time, or talking about it, and it triggered them, and it really made them uncomfortable. And so, we had to talk about setting the boundaries and stuff, and why they needed to say something to someone. It was about taking care of themselves as well as potentially taking care of that person. So you never know if the joke is a joke or if it's something they're just throwing out there, and they really mean it. So okay, so we're at 8 o'clock straight up. So I want to ask you one more thing before we head out, if that's all right.
Go for it.
Okay. So, and this one is, again, it's something I hear a lot that happens is when someone's in a friendship or a relationship and the person says, I'm going to hurt myself if you do this. And I know we talked about this before we came on. This could be in the whole healthy relationship, violence kind of thing. But let's talk about this from the perspective of what does somebody do in that situation if that threat is made?
Great question, and it happens, right? So we hope this is youth who've heard a few of these tools and skills, right? We do these in high schools, youth use these. So Megan and I have seen lots of youth use these because first and foremost is sort of the safety of that person, right? So following up, but knowing that it's within this relationship and knowing we need to care for ourselves too. The hope is, right? No surprise here, involve an adult and a professional to help sort that out. But we do want to hear in that moment if that person is in distress, they're going to head out with car keys, they're going to take something, they're going to do something. We want to know if they're thinking about it now. But we want to empower that youth, that someone having, even if they're in control, I mean, if it is about control or if it's about their own distress, even if a breakup causes someone so much heartache that they become suicidal, it is okay to break up with someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we encourage in that moment to use the steps to see where someone is at, reach out to adults, reach out to the people in their lives who then can coach them as this happens. Often, right, in that distress, there's that threat, right? Um, and I think, that can be that way even in friendships a little bit too, and other
Yeah.
things where they're saying it a lot to somebody. And that's where we just have to give that permission. We are acknowledging that someone's in distress and there's something going on, and we're going to tend to that immediately. And then next, we get to focus on ourselves and what needs we have. Megan, what would you add on that one?
I think one of the things in this case too that I think about is like what is the access to lethal means? Because I think there is this opportunity to like protect the environment in a way where an impulsive or rash or emotionally based decision in that moment that was like a if this then this is going to happen, then that would be when I really want to talk like hey, mom, I really want to break up with my boyfriend. And he's saying this every time. Um, I don't know what to do and it scares me. And I want to make sure that they're safe. Right. And so then is it about, does that person have access to firearms? Are there large quantities of medication? Do they have keys to their own car? Right. What does that look like for them? Are there other warning signs going on, right? Where that might be more real for them, where you can kind of ask some of those questions. But I mean, Amy's 100% involve a trusted adult, and see what you can ask to figure out how you can keep that person safe. Those follow-up questions in that R step, right? Like, tell me about how you're thinking about ending your life. Do you have access to those means? Do you have an active plan? That might give you more information to know, is this a really valid, viable threat? Or is this someone who's angry in the moment at me? And again, it's never our job to figure that out all by ourselves.
Yeah.
But we can ask those questions to better prepare whoever is responding to that situation to have more information.
For sure. Yeah, it's not the person's responsibility to deal with the whole thing, but like you said, you can bring up those questions if you can and tell a trusted adult. That is like for the teens, you don't have to handle it on your own. That's the bottom line. There's lots of support out there.
Yeah.
All right. We are at the end. Any last minute things that either of you feel like you need to let everyone know?
I think I would just want to acknowledge that sometimes, right, Amy has already said this today, but at the beginning, like sometimes we are not our kids' trusted adult as their parent. And so when you have those conversations in the car, on the way to practice, around the dinner table, please, please, please talk with your young people about who the trusted adults in their lives are and give them
At that moment, it
permission.
shifts all the time,
Right.
right? Whether
Like
they
it's
love us
always
or hate us.
changing. Right. But
That's
but
why.
also give your kids permission to like have a trusted adult that's not you. And give them that gift.
And I would just say tonight, this is a lot of information, whether
Oh,
you're
yeah.
watching this on your own or you just spent an hour talking about suicide with us. We are thrilled and just want to cheer you on and validate that being a parent is hard work. And this program that Sherry's doing, and Parent Chat, like what a gift that there's time spent where we can think about the tools we need to add and what we can be doing. But as you disengage this evening, instead of only thinking about all these things, what can you do to bring you to the here and now? What senses can you awaken, whether by smell or a sight or a sound after this or a person, so that you can be doing self-care? Megan mentioned that barge. For us to be that barge, that safe person, walking alongside, being available, modeling, reaching out to others when we don't have the answers, right? We need to be doing that self-care. So we celebrate you tonight. We encourage you in your journey. It's not easy. We're here alongside you as parents, and we just want to say you are rock stars, and we're grateful you're here. And if you're able to bring a teen with you, even more power to you. But yay for parents tonight. We just wanted to say that.
Yes, definitely. I second that. And I would say that this is recorded. All of you who are registered, you will get a recording, a link to the recording. And I would challenge all of you to share this with at least 5 other people, whether you're a teen or you're a parent, share it with 5 other people and say, hey, this is a conversation we need to be having in our community. All right.
100%.
Thank you, Sherry, for the work
Thank
that you
you.
do. This is a great program.
And for all of you who showed up live tonight, we see you.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night. Good night. We'll see you for the next parent chat, which is actually with a teen who wrote a book about mental health and who has some amazing emotion cards that she's created. So we're going to bring her into the conversation next time. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks again for attending, and we'll see you on the next one.